Oh my gosh, we are live. I am so excited today to have the amazing and talented Amy Sariego on the show. Amy, how are you? This is a dream come true.
I'm good. I'm happy it's finally feeling like fall outside.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's getting so cold here in Virginia. I think we had like temperatures in the 20s yesterday. So, but I'm waiting for the snow. That's what I'm really hoping will come soon. I love the snow.
I
So,
don't. We had a couple flurries.
yeah, yeah. Well, tell me, it was just Thanksgiving last week. How was your Thanksgiving, Amy?
It was good. I feel like the whole Thanksgiving break kind of flew by.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really did. And I know what a great Thanksgiving person you are. You love Thanksgiving. So tell me what was, what was the favorite part of your Thanksgiving meal?
I'm not a fan of Thanksgiving food at all. I eat like a roll, and that's pretty much the running joke is that I don't like Thanksgiving.
That is too funny. I love rolls. We had lots of rolls in my house, so you could have come over and you could have eaten them all. They would have all been yours. So oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you on the show, Amy. You have been such a critical part of the DMG team for the last year and a half now that we've been collaborating together. And it is so exciting for me to have you come on the show today and share your amazing expertise with the team. You are such a force, and have such a powerful influence on the work that we bring to our clients. So thanks so much for being on today. Can't wait to have this amazing conversation.
Yeah. I can't believe it's been a year and a half.
I know. That's so funny. I'll never forget the first time I met you. You were introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, John Pavoni. So, John, if you're out there and you're listening, we love you. You're amazing. Thank you for introducing me to the amazing Amy, because every day I wake up and I just count my lucky stars that she's in my life and part of this team. So, yeah, I'll never forget that first conversation that we had. That was super fun. I knew right away from the minute I met you, I was like, I want to work with that girl. She's pretty cool. So, we are here to talk all about content marketing and the impact of content marketing for your brand. And specifically, talking about how manufacturers can benefit from content marketing. This is what we do every day at DMG, is really help our manufacturers create a really great web presence, and that a huge part of that is through content marketing. So I would love to hear Amy, why did I say little? My amazing content marketer extraordinaire. Why did you decide you wanted to be a content marketing? Is this marketer? Is this something that you knew you wanted to be when you were a little girl? What led you down this journey, this path where you are today?
Um, well, I don't think content marketing, well, as we know it now anyway, was a thing when I was little, but
Mhm.
I always knew I wanted to write. And then I got into
Mhm.
marketing kind of by accident. I was like an intern at an insurance company, and someone asked me like, "Oh, if you could go back and work for any of the departments, like which one would you have picked?" And I was like, "Oh, probably none. Like I would probably pick marketing or something." And he was like, "Oh, like you should go work in marketing then." And I was like, "Okay." And so I kind of did that, and then we started working with an agency, and like I got to see like the other side of it, like working in an agency, and that's where I kind of started learning about SEO and stuff. And so it kind of went from there. But yeah, it was an accident.
It was totally an accident, but have you always loved writing? Like, tell me about when did you start writing for the very first time?
Mm, I can't really remember a time when I wasn't. I
Oh,
remember in kindergarten, my class like wrote this little poetry book and like published it, and it was like I wrote a poem about stars. And I think I've been chasing the high of that published stars poem
ever since.
ever since.
Oh my gosh, I wanna see this poem about stars. That's amazing.
I'm sure it's in my
Oh,
mom's like basement somewhere.
isn't that so funny? I was just talking with a dear friend of mine, about when I was a kid and how I loved writing too when I was a kid. So I think that's so funny, but I love to write these plays. So I would write plays for my, like, 3rd and 4th grade class, and my teacher was so awesome, my teachers, they would always let us put them on. So I'd write these plays, and then we put on these plays for the classroom,
Oh my
and they were
god.
always like these funny plays about, like, "We're gonna go on a field trip to Washington, DC," or like something funny like that. It was always like, but I loved that too. So that's so super cool, and I wanna see this stars poem. So Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about content marketing because there's been a lot of like, first of all, maybe you can tell us what is content marketing for anyone out there who's like, what is content marketing? How does this work? Tell us what is content marketing?
I think at its like most simple definition, content marketing is just using content, something you've written, whether it's a blog, an email, something on your website, to educate your customers, your audience, your buyers,
Mhm.
um, and make their decision, their day, whatever you offer, make it a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many like so exciting about content marketing today is that there's so many different ways that you can educate and help and inspire your buyers, right? Like the ways that you can do it, it's just so extraordinary. And it's just such a great way to be able to connect with your buyers at scale, truthfully, like in a way that you can't necessarily do in the traditional ways. So, well,
Yeah.
let's talk about like how have you seen content marketing evolve over because you've been in this industry for a while now. So content marketing, while the concept of content marketing pretty much has been in existence forever, right? It really has changed a lot and evolved over time, right? Like how have you seen it change over the last 10 years? When you first started doing content marketing, kind of what was the focus of content marketing then, and how has it evolved now?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I was freelancing even then while I was still in school. And
Mhm.
I just remember, like, when I think about, like, how it's changed, one of the first places I wrote for was this website called BookBub, and they are like an ebook, marketplace, kind of, like, they have, like, deals on ebooks,
Uh-huh,
and so they had a blog,
uh-huh.
and there would be this humongous list of topics, and the person would running it at the time would be like, "Get this, set of words in the title and in the, meta description." I didn't know really what SEO was at the time. I was just, like, thrilled to be writing about books. And I just remember thinking, like, and asking, like, "This doesn't really make sense, like, grammatically, like, do I have to put the words in this order?" And it was just, like, a list of keywords.
Oh,
And so I
yeah.
think, like,
Mhm.
seeing it evolve from, like, keyword stuffing and just, like, writing absolutely as much content as you can and, like,
Mm.
only really writing for keywords and not so much for humans. I would say that's the biggest thing I would say is, like, now it's, like, less is definitely more.
Mhm.
You really have to know who you're writing for rather than just, like, here's this massive list of keywords and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. Like, just get it in there. Like, no one is
Yeah,
doing that anymore.
yeah.
So I would say that's the biggest thing is like really having to understand who you're writing for. And also I think the fact that just like everything is like content now. Like people discuss like call like books and like movies like, oh, content. I'm like, so I don't know. I think that everything being content for me is like a sad change.
Oh,
But
interesting. Tell me more about that. Why? Tell me why that's sad for you.
I don't know. I mean, a book is or like a movie or something is like this like huge like passion project for someone that they like put like so many years of their
Uh-huh.
lives into. Or like I think of content and I think of like a blog or like something that you're using to like educate someone. Whereas like
Mhm.
those things are kind of like I don't know, not just content. I think it's like more than content. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like some pieces of content are just bigger and have or should be treated maybe in a
Yeah.
different way. Yeah, that's interesting. Very cool. We have Andrew here today. Andrew, my dear friend. Oh my goodness, Andrew's amazing. He says, "Hello, Nicole. How's one of my favorite people?" Andrew, you're one of my favorite people, and I'm so glad, Andrew, you get to meet Amy. Andrew has an amazing podcast. It's called Let's Be Diverse. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, he has some really cool guests on the show. I had the honor of being a guest on his show a couple of months ago, and it was just such a treat. So Andrew, thanks for coming. It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
All
It's nice.
right. Yeah, I think you love it, Amy. It's just some really cool topics. So let's talk about blogging, okay? Because there's a lot of people out there that are saying now that AI is here, right? And it's here to stay. There's a lot of people questioning whether blogging is still relevant. And we're seeing that there's been, blogging really kind of had started out maybe what would you say, like big heyday came like 15, 20 years ago, right? Is when people really started blogging in earnest. And it's definitely evolved over time and there's a lot of there's a lot more content now on the web than there ever has been. And so sometimes I see these articles and these naysayers that are like, is blogging even still relevant anymore? Does it even still have it make a difference? It's hard. The truth of the matter is that it's getting harder and harder to rank in Google. for keywords. That's the reality that we're in because of how saturated some of these, keywords are. But I'd love to ask you, Amy, what do you think? Do you think blogging is still relevant today for businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think one of my little, like, pet peeves is, like, I feel like every day you come on to LinkedIn or I don't know, you see an article and it's like, "This thing is dead," and, like, so often now it's like, "Blogging is dead," and someone is planning its funeral, and I don't really think that's true. I think it will always have a place, especially with AI. I feel like that's, like, your one spot that is, like, on your website, it's yours, like, you should be sharing, like, your unique point of view and, like, what you do and believe and, like, really tell your story rather than just, like, write for the sake of writing and write for the sake of ranking on Google. Like, it should be, you obviously still have to consider that, but, like, I think the biggest difference in what will make you relevant with your blogs is, like, are they well written? Are they actually about you? Are you writing just for
Mhm.
the sake of it? Are you thinking about what the blog is going to do for you and how you're gonna distribute it? Like, no one is coming to your blog like it's the New York Times and saying, like, "Oh, what is this person up to today?" Um, but I like, if you're thinking like, "Oh, how can my sales team use this? Like, is this a question people are asking and I'm answering it in a unique
Mhm.
way? Like, is this helpful for my customer service team maybe?" Like, I think it'll always be relevant. It's just how you use it more than just the fact of, like, in the past, it was like, "Oh, if you have a blog at all, you're kind of, like, ahead."
Yeah, such really great points there. I love what you said about using the blog to tell stories and to showcase what it is that makes you as a brand unique. That is such a really important way for brands to be able to stand out is to use the blog as storytelling, really. And that's the key differentiator is creating content that's really going to be unique, that tells your story, that separates you from everyone else. And like, whereas in the past, maybe blogging, was written purely for SEO purposes, right? Like marketing has just become so much more complex. But the reality is that your website is your home. That is your home. No matter where someone finds you today, whether they find you on TikTok or uh, Reddit or LinkedIn or they hear from a friend, if you think about it, if you're seriously considering any buying from any company, at the end of the day, you're going to land on their website at some point. You're going, the reality is you're going to. You want to know who it is that you're buying from, and you want to know all about them. So no matter how you're finding out about them, whether you hear them in an ad or whatever, for the most part, you're going to go and end up on their website. And you want your website to have good information there as a brand. You want your blog to have really great content that answers their top questions and concerns that they might have about the product, that tells your story, that tells the stories of your customers and how you helped serve them. So like there's definitely, I couldn't agree with you more that there's still such an important role that blogging plays for businesses today. The only thing that's changed is not that blogging has become irrelevant, but that blogging is just one piece of all of the other parts of marketing that are so important for a brand today. And it's still a very, very critical and important and highly, highly relevant part of any branding
Yeah,
and marketing strategy. Yeah.
and I think
Love
too, like, keeping an eye on I think one of the other things that has changed and come a long way is, like, the ignore, the branded search terms, but now I think, you see those climbing, you see those growing, like,
yeah.
it doesn't matter, like you were saying, like, where people hear about you, like, they're still, like, going to Google and typing in, like, whatever your brand name is, and so, like, if you see that going up and you're doing a lot of content marketing, like, that's another probable sign that something is working.
I love what you said there about branded search, and I think people should pay attention to that because that is how you can measure your brand awareness. Is if you can see that the number of times that people are searching for your brand in the search results is increasing over time, that means more people are recognizing and knowing your brand enough that they can just type you and they're looking for you specifically. And I think that's a really, really good point that's going to become even more important in the years to come. We know with AI right now, it's so much easier for people to spit out really derivative content, right? And the last thing that you want to do as a brand is create anything that's derivative, right? You want to be able to create unique, authentic content that stands out and content that's going to be picked up by AI, right? And
Mhm.
so how can you position your brand so that it's associated with a really key core topic that someone might be searching for in a search bot, so that when they search for that in the AI search bot, because you as a brand have been talking about that topic so much, your brand is going to come up in that chat bot associated with that topic. And I think that's looking ahead. What do you think about that, Amy? What is your thoughts on how brands should be thinking about AI and content and all of that? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like now more than ever, it's like you have to be establishing yourself as a brand. And so
Mhm.
it's almost becoming, it's not less about SEO, but I think it's just thinking about it differently, like really being known for those like
Yeah.
few topics and like honing in on them and like making it more about how you specifically do something. And so like in that content saying like, here's how we do it. And so when people are searching
Mhm.
for those topics or for your brand, that's what you're associated with. Like, and
Yeah,
I
I
think just
love
like how people write too is changing a lot because of AI, whether they're writing more and it's bad or they're saving themselves time on the front end, like with their in the prepping stages and having more time to write, which is something that I think is really valuable.
Ooh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you've been leveraging AI, right? Like it's the way we at our organization have been using AI is really as kind of like admin support, right? And you have developed this really incredible process how to train your AI that you use. And I love the phrase technology is a terrible master but a wonderful servant, right? So there always needs to be someone managing the strings, if you will, of AI in order for it to really truly work and perform, right? And you've created this really great way of doing that. So tell me about what are your thoughts on AI and what are some of the things that you found to really help you improve the quality, the efficiency, and the process of writing using tools like ChatGPT?
I think, yeah, for what we do for our clients is we'll do a subject matter expert interview. And so
Mhm.
ChatGPT is so helpful in taking that humongous, depending, people have a lot to say, which is great, but it's also a lot to go through for one person where you can like now just put it into ChatGPT and it'll give you the summary. For me, that's the best part is
Yeah.
getting that. You can ask it to make you an outline. You can, I would never say have it write an entire blog for you. People will know in like a half a second that a person did not write that. But I think the more that you teach it, the more as you're writing blogs, you feed it back to it when it's done helping you with the outline, with the transcript review, then it knows how you write. It knows about that client or that brand. And so when you
Mhm.
do go there the next time or you ask it, what is a relevant topic for this brand based on what you know, you can see it just getting better and like giving you better suggestions and more honed in suggestions. And I think like from the planning phase, just like getting those topics ready, um, the like pre-writing phase for me is probably the best part about it, getting that transcript in there and getting um even the questions for the subject matter expert interviews, like the more that it knows the brand, I would say, like the more that you can show it your website, show it the blogs
Mhm.
you already have, and you're already ideally only showing it things that you've written, so
Mhm.
it's it's even better because it's learning like your voice or my voice and
Or the brand voice.
the brand voice,
That's
exactly. And
so
that's
cool.
another thing.
So yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, like it can create a simple voice and tone guide, and a lot of people don't have those. And so like even if you're, starting writing for someone new, if you're a freelancer like I am, showing it something and saying like, "Hey, give me an overview of what you think this voice and tone style is." Just you can read it yourself and figure it out, but I think it's always interesting to get that sense, and then when you have a finished piece of content, give it back and kind of say like, does this match the voice and tone that
Ooh,
we've
that's
done
very
this before?
clever.
So that's a good way of making sure you're kind of like in line with what's
Yeah.
already been done.
So what are some of the things that you feed into the AI to help it know more about the brand voice? Like at the very beginning of a project, right? You're just working with the client. What are some things that you will basically train the AI to know about the brand so that it can understand the voice of the brand, the tone, and help craft some of those like key questions and things? What types of information would you feed it?
If they have target keywords, I usually start
Mhm.
there. The website, there's a ton of plugins that will review it for you for
Oh,
um,
yeah.
SEO or just like, to be able to see it, review the website, blogs that already exist, even if I didn't write them. Like I said, just to get a sense of the voice and tone. And
Mhm.
if they have like personas, if they have target audiences, and like a
Mhm.
description, that's pretty
Mhm.
helpful because it'll know a little bit more how to write. Um, I would say those are the primary things.
I love that. So feeding it website links, blog links, persona information, and I feel like I missed one more. Help me sum that last one up, Amy. Blog links, website links, persona information,
Oh, and keywords.
and keywords. Thank you. And so you'll feed that in the beginning so that that AI, which has its little artificial brain, will start to know and store that information and use it to use it to inform any future content that comes out. Right. Love that. And so tell me about like when you do the SME interviews, and those are always transcribed, right? So you get a written transcription from the SME. How do you use that transcription with AI? How does that process work?
Well, we'll typically have a list of questions that we're asking, and so I'll give it the question and say like, answer this and give a
Mhm.
summary of this answer, or answer this in blog article form,
Mhm.
if it's a little bit more of a complex topic. And then it'll spit out something usually pretty bad, but like it's just like a starting point, especially if you're new to a specific brand. I feel like that's like a great way to get started. Or if you're having writer's block, like sometimes you're just not in the mood and
Mhm.
you have a deadline, so you can't really not be in the mood. But so like I think that it's a good way to like kind of kickstart your brain into being like, okay, here's how I can start. And then also something I started doing is asking it to use fewer adjectives, because it'll be like
Ah,
the calamitous blah blah blah. Like it's always throwing in these like crazy
it
words.
does. And they're usually like way over the top. Like
They're over the top. So if you just ask it not to do that, like you'll get much more normal sounding answers.
it's amazing how well you can train it if you get really specific with the prompts, like asking it to use fewer adjectives or giving it a specific like type of tone of voice that you want it to write
Yeah.
in, you
The
know.
fewer adjectives thing, that's like my most recent favorite trick
Ah,
because
yeah.
it just sounds like it sounds like deranged a lot of the time, like what it comes out with. And like without that, I feel like that really helps cut down on like things that I'm just like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Because it's
So it
not helpful if you're just if you have to basically just undo everything it did.
So basically, the way it works with the AI now is like you becoming like this really, really great editor, right? Where you can take the information that comes out and choose what's good and what's not good and build on that and create something even better than what it's coming out with. Would you say that's been your experience or
Yeah, I would say even better, especially recently. When it first came out, I was honestly like not on board. I was like, this is not anything. Like, this is not
I
helpful.
remember.
Yeah.
I remember. We had some pretty intense conversations
I
behind
was
the
like, this is
scenes.
the worst thing
Remember?
ever. And now I'm like,
Oh.
listen to what I found out about it this week. So it has come a far way, and so has my opinion on it. But I still think the best part of it is that it saves time on the like admin side, the like prepping side, and so and then I can do what I like best, which is writing and
Yes.
try to decipher a 15-page transcript.
Yeah, I think that's what's really what I've seen has been really amazing is its ability to synthesize the information that you put into it, and then it gives you kind of like a foundation that you can build on and make even better so that you're not completely starting from scratch. And then on the question side, when you're doing an SME interview, you always want to make sure like truthfully like those questions that you ask for that SME interview, that is the foundation. Is the quality of the questions that you're asking those SMEs. If your questions aren't great, then your article is not going to be great. And so if you can really like spend some time as a content marketer up front working with ChatGPT to kind of flesh out those questions in depth and really train it to give you better questions to ask, I think that's huge. And I've personally seen a significant improvement in the quality of the blog articles just from that process, being able to leverage it in that way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it makes it much easier, and clients have said it, like, that the
Mhm,
questions are good or that they're really on target, and so I think it's a
mhm.
matter of understanding the brand a little bit more before you or making it understand the brand a little bit more before you ask it for questions, because the more that it understands, the more specific and honed in those questions are going to be. Yeah.
I love it. Now let's just talk about, I think a lot of times people are like AI is fake. We want real content and everything. So as marketers, we use AI. We know that we have to use it and leverage for the future. How do you keep the human part in the writing process when you're using a tool like ChatGPT, for example? How do you infuse that in so that the content just doesn't become derivative drivel?
I think it comes back to that storytelling element and a little bit of that keyword research too. So I think the best SME interviews that lead to the best blogs for me are the ones where it's like someone's family business, or something they started out of because of something that they really love or something like that, and they want to talk about it, and they have so much passion for it. And that is something that like after just talking about how the best to use AI, I would say like that's the one place where I don't do that, because I feel like that will just dilute what they're saying. And if it's like a story about how someone's dad founded the company and they took it over and like something like that, like I feel like you're gonna lose that in the way that they're saying it, like the warmth that comes out. And so I feel like if you can weave that in, I usually like to put like that, like a story like that in the introduction, and like kind of carry like a theme kind of through
Yeah.
the article.
I've seen you do that very beautifully. And I think you're absolutely right. Like that is, as brands who are thinking about how to really improve because branding is focusing on your branding is the future, right? That's how you're going to stand out, how you're going to be different, what makes you unique. And I love what you're saying here about storytelling. That's such a critical part that AI can never replicate. And so not being afraid, like lean into those stories with your SMEs. Get them to share the stories of how they helped their customers win the day and use real life examples in the blog articles. I think we saw, blog articles, like they call them listicles, right? 10, 15 years ago, those performed really well. Well, it's just kind of very objective. Here are the 10 things you need to do to create a solid blog post, right? Very objective, nothing unique or personal about it, right? Like that is not the kind of content that you as a brand want to stand behind going forward. You want to have a point of view, you want to have a story to tell and stories to share in everything that you create that's going to make you stand out. So when someone comes to see you, they're going to know exactly what makes you different than Joe Schmo down the street. Yeah, so I love that approach that you mentioned about making sure you're weaving in the storytelling throughout the intro and throughout the article.
I read today, actually, I think the Merriam-Webster word of the year is authentic. And I think that says so much about like where we're like right now with AI and TikTok filters that make you look absolutely perfect and everything else. Like people really just want to read and interact with stuff that is from an actual person. So I feel like
and I think that's such a great word. And it's only going to be more like that in the future. Like as AI continues to evolve, people are going to be searching and seeking even more for just like the real authentic experience of humans, right? The fact that I've got these like flyaway hair sticking straight up, guys. I tried, they're just there. And I've been like the whole show, I've been like, oh my gosh, but you get to see my flyaways. That's the Nicole here. But yeah, I love that too. And I think as brands, isn't that exciting? Isn't it exciting now that like we get to celebrate the humanity of our brands, what makes us personal and unique, and the stories? Like, I don't know, for any businesses out there, this is exciting. Like I think I'd rather be telling stories of how, our customers have won the day and, all of that, rather than talking about some listicle about here are the 10 things you need to put in a blog post. It just so much more interesting. It's so much more fun to be part of those kinds of stories. And the other exciting part about it too is if you can involve your customers in that process and infuse their stories into your content. Man, what a great way to see like a transference of trust and co-marketing and being able to, reach an even broader audience when you can bring those stories in from a marketing perspective. It's just such a great opportunity to really leverage those customer stories. And so you're winning together, and everyone you can just reach more people that way, I think. So very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about let's talk about what you think every manufacturer should be blogging about? Like, do you have like kind of like a core list of topics that you're just like, okay, everyone who's never blogged before and is just getting started, like this is the foundation of what you need to do? Or do you have like kind of like a core five?
Um, I would say, yeah, I am a big fan of Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer book. And
Yeah.
so that has the 5 like core topics. And I think those have really stood the test of time.
Mhm.
They are talking about price, talking about comparisons, how you stack up against your competitors, best of lists, reviews, and problems. So I think that all of those topics kind of go back to that authenticity, that like
Yeah.
wanting to really be transparent about your brand. Like a lot of people don't want to talk about price. A lot of people don't want to talk about their competitors, and that's totally understandable. But at the same time, like people are going to find out who your competitors are. They are probably already looking at their website too. So I think shying away from it is just making you look a little bit like,
Shady.
yeah, like a little bit shady, like a little bit like you don't want to like talk about what is something that's honestly pretty obvious. Like anyone who has a keyboard can find out who your competitors are. So calling it out, I think, right up front and saying like, hey, this is who, we're in the sandbox with, and here's how we're the same and different, and here's how our prices are the same and different. And like those are 5 articles, and I think you can get a lot of mileage out of each topic. You can get multiple articles, you can get one really dense, amazing article that you can repurpose and use hopefully a bunch of times over.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think those big 5 are really the
Yeah.
big
Okay.
5
So
I would recommend.
price comparison, which is comparing to your competitors, reviews, like how you stack up, and how your customers are. What are they saying about you?
Good and bad reviews.
Good
Have
and
to
bad
include
reviews.
both.
Yes. And then you mentioned best in class, right? Like an article about like who's the best in class in this particular category. And did I get them all? Comparison, price, best in class reviews, and problems.
Problems,
Problems is
yeah.
a big one. Like addressing what are the top problems that your customers are asking you over and over again and answering those. I mean, it's just a way for you to scale your sales team. We did this exercise many years ago with a manufacturer that I was working at, and we had a meeting with the sales team, and I was like, okay, guys, we are going to blog. We're going to do this. We're going to blog regularly, twice a month. We're doing it. And so the first thing I did is I sat down with them and I said, I want you to tell me the top 10 questions your customers are asking you over and over again. And it's just so simple, right? And they all know. The salespeople all know. They were just like sat there and they're just like, yeah, they ask us about price. They ask us about, how do I size this system out? And they could just spit them off the top of their head. And I'm just like, imagine a world where all of these questions could be answered on your website so that when they call you, they already know the answer and you don't have to tell it to them over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying too is so smart because customers are smart. Show respect to your customers. They are smart. They're going to go and do their research. 70% of the buying process now is happening online. They are smart. So respect that. They're going to do their research. I remember I had this conversation with a client once who was just like so didn't want to put their pricing on the website. And I asked him, I was like, do you know what your competitors are charging for similar products? And he's like, yeah, I know. Because his biggest thing was like, I don't want my competitor to know my price because then they're going to undercut my price. And I was like, well, do you know what your competitors are charging? Yeah. Is it published anywhere? No. But right? I'm like, yeah,
So they probably know.
yeah, so they're gonna know your price, right? Like, so, why are we playing this little song dance? Like, just be real. Be
Just do
real.
it. Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah, I love that. Those are great 5 for any manufacturers. And I think you made a good point too, is that a lot of times when we talk to clients about doing these, there is resistance, right? There is a sense of like, oh my goodness, we're not sure we're ready to do that. Kind of takes some time to get them comfortable with it. Have you seen like what's been your experience there? What are some things or strategies or things that you found help customers to get comfortable with talking about those things?
It's really just a lot of explaining and reassuring and pointing out the fact that like your competitors probably know what you're charging. Like, and you don't know. And I think this is something too that I like to point out is like you don't know if their pricing is working. You don't know, because a lot of people are like, oh, I can't do this because they're not doing it, or I have to do this
Yeah.
because they're doing it, or something like that. And it's kind of just like you don't know what's working for them. You only know what's working for you. And
Yeah.
so, and if you're scared to talk about pricing because it might be too high or it might be too low or something like that, like then that's kind of just like that person self-selecting themselves in or out for your brand. Like it is either a fit or it's not. And chances are, if it was not, then you weren't going to get that business anyway. So you might as well have the price there for the person who is ready to pay it.
Oh, I love what you said that. That's a really good point because when you talk about it, it allows you to narrow down people self-select. And so then instead of getting fed all these like leads that really truthfully aren't qualified, you're getting better leads because they've selected for themselves that you're a good fit for them. So they're more ready to purchase from you. That is such a great point. Like, because the point is not to get like an influx of all these crappy leads. They call you, how much does it cost? And then it's out of their budget and you've wasted all this time. How
Yeah.
much better would it be if they've looked at it and said, okay, that price is in my range. Then they call, they're much better fit. You may get fewer of them calling, but the ones that call you or contact you are much better fit. And your time is much more efficiently used in that way. That's a really good, really, really good point. Love it. Oh, Amy, can we just talk all day?
I could talk about this all day. I could talk to you all day.
I know. It's so much fun. So, okay. So my next question for you is, um, when do you think it makes sense? This is a big one. When do you think makes sense to hire an internal content marketer? And when does it make sense for you to outsource, right? There's several ways that you can do this. You can either outsource to an agency or you can hire someone. Do you have any thoughts on from your experience? Because you've done it both ways. When do you think it makes sense? What's your advice for manufacturers?
I think it depends on how much of a priority it is for your organization. I think if you're just getting started and you're trying to see if it's the right fit for you, maybe, and I think some of our clients have started this way, start with hiring someone and do, a blog every few weeks, a blog every week, something like that, just to get it going. And then, see how it's performing, see how it's doing, and then maybe bring it in-house once you see that there is, because I think that's something people need to know is like, is there actually value in this? Like they might not want to have like, a whole full-time person with salary and benefits on their team if they aren't sure this is something that they're going to stick with.
Mhm.
So maybe starting out with a freelancer or an agency or something like that, as you're like building out your content strategy, building out what you want your content to look like, and then bringing it in-house once you have a little bit more clear of an idea of what that is. And I think a lot of teams need a little bit of like a warm up, like a ramping up period where they're like, is this
Yeah.
going to work for us? Is it not? So I think that's one way to bridge that worry. You're not taking as big of a risk necessarily.
Oh, that's really good advice. I like that a lot. Um, I think too, even teams that are larger, right? Like I think of the solo marketers, for example. There's so many out there in manufacturing. There's just these like solo marketer teams of one, and they're trying to do so much. And I was one of them. I remember being the solo marketer for a manufacturing company, and you have to wear a lot of hats, and a lot of it is just project management and setting expectations with vendors. And you simply, like, if you're in that position, if you are in a manufacturing business and you are the solo marketer, you need help. You need a good you need a good content marketer who can support you and help you create some of this content, because it doesn't happen in the ether. And so I think if you're a solo marketer out there and maybe your company's not doesn't have the resources to bring in other team, that can be a really good way for you to just work with an agency who has really deep experience in conducting SME interviews, because there is a science to that. It's asking the right questions and getting the SME to be comfortable and really understanding that process. And it takes a lot of skill to prepare those SMEs and to do those interviews properly. So yeah, that's really good advice, Amy. I love it. I love it all.
Those interviews are definitely a science. They were not my favorite thing to do. Even 6 months to a year ago, they were not my favorite thing, but I feel like now I've kind of gotten a little bit more warmed up myself.
Yeah, tell me about that. What do you think has made like, what do you think makes a solid SME interview? What are some of the qualities that make a really good one?
Mm, I think it goes back to the passion, like someone who has been doing it for a while or
Mhm.
who is definitely bought into the idea of doing it. Like you can always tell if someone is just reading off of a piece of paper, like they don't really want to, like their answers are super, super short, and you're sitting there and then your mind kind of goes off because their answers are so short and you're like, oh God, like what kind of blog am I going to get from this? Like what kind of, can I even use this? And then I would be sitting there panicking, thinking, oh
Yeah.
no, I can't do this. So I think having someone who has the industry expertise
Yes.
and who can explain it in a not a dumbed down way, but in a way that is like you would explain it to your mom or something like that, or like
Mhm.
your grandmother, or someone who is not necessarily in the industry, but can like wants to understand. So if you can explain it to me, like or you can explain it to anyone in a really simplified way, without losing, especially in manufacturing, it's such a can be such a technical thing. Um, yeah, I think someone who can explain things really, really well, really simply, has that passion, takes the time. I think I would say it's really important if you are a content marketer to send them those questions well in advance of the interview, because the more time they
Mhm.
have to prepare, the
Yeah.
better off you will both be on the day of. Um, yeah, someone who will take that time to prepare. And yeah, I think that's
I love those 3 points. Like, so working with someone who is truly an expert and has that deep expertise. And I love your point too about even coaching them to be able to explain it in layman's terms. Because a lot of times these SMEs, they've been doing this for so long. It's really hard when you're an expert to get yourself in the mindset of being the beginner, right?
mhm.
So as an interviewer, how can you coach them or ask them follow-up questions to say, well, how could you explain this to my mom or to your mom or your sister if you were just explaining it to them? I think is a really good point. And then sending the questions well in advance so they have time to prepare is another really huge one. I love that. That's really good. We have Scott Sittler here. Scott is my dear friend. He was in this amazing class that we took together several years ago, Mark Ritson, marketing mini MBA class, and he was such a fun partner. He says, fear of being deselected based on price without ability to justify, but that assumes the prospects reads nothing but the price. Yes,
That's
so
so true.
true. I think, Scott, this is a really good point going back to prices. And even like this just goes back to the point of making sure you're blogging about it is not just putting a price up there, but explaining what goes into that price, right? Like what are all the factors that go into the building of this product, the price, so that people have some justification or reasoning or understanding of what that price, what the context of that price even is. And I think, we've seen that our blog posts on price, when you talk about it and what are the factors that go into it, they perform very, very well because that is the top question people want to know is how much does it cost and why does it cost that? And so I love that point. That's a really good point. What do you think
That's
about
also,
that?
yeah. No, that's a great way in my experience too to outrank your competitors on
Mhm.
search. I have had a blog that was comparing the price of different systems, and we listed our competitors, we listed what they do, we listed their price or like a range at least, as along with our own. And now when people type in price of competitor, it was our article that was coming up. And so like
Yeah,
you might be worried about your competitors, but chances are if they're not talking about it and you are talking about it, like you are going
exactly.
to outperform them.
Exactly. And don't you want to be the source that they find first? That's such a great point. I love that. Yeah, great point, Scott. Very cool. Well, okay. Man, I'm just going back to my questions here to see what we have else to talk about. Okay, let's talk about like just measuring performance. Okay. How do you measure the impact of content marketing, right? Because I think a lot of times I have to be honest. I mean, so many prospects and clients are just like, why would we blog? We care about ROI. We want to see, performance marketing is a thing. It's always, especially for small businesses, right? They're all about are we getting leads and are we getting sales, right? So to help us learn, tell me, Amy, what do you think about like how you measure the impact of content marketing and a piece of content? Like, what's your recommendation there? And what should businesses be thinking about in terms of the impact of content marketing and how they should be looking at it and how they should be measuring it, its effectiveness?
What a huge question. Um, I would say have a way for someone to convert on your blog. So whether it's asking for a free trial or having someone subscribe to your blog right at the top and it stays there as they're reading, that reader to new contact rate is a great way to just like top very
Yeah.
high level, just say like, okay, this many people are subscribing, this many people are asking to at least
Uh-huh.
learn more. HubSpot does a great job with dashboards and attribution reporting. If you use that as a tool, that's my favorite thing. Is it will tell you just about anything. If you are looking, if you want to report on it, it probably can. Revenue attribution is a great one in there. You could build a report all around that. It'll tie. I mean, nothing is a perfect science, so don't. I
Yeah.
would say keep your expectations kind of in like a fair, but it will give you a number tied to each blog, and I think that's a great way to say like, hey, look, this is really working. This has brought in this many actual
Mhm.
dollars of revenue because we talked about this. And so being able to say that really like helps justify, I think, the cost of content marketing.
Yes.
Um,
So
and in-
building an infrastructure so that every blog has a call to action with the next step that's going to be that newsletter subscription or a way for you to build your contact list. So you can start to see that conversion process, I think is huge. And being able to leverage a tool like HubSpot or a CR, a marketing automation platform that allows you to see the analytics in terms of viewership, the subscriptions that are coming from that blog, and then the revenue to be able to see and tie it to revenue is huge. So I love that. Keep going. Keep telling me more.
um, uh, I would say an increase in traffic too, but that's one what the, it can be a little bit tricky. Is it the right traffic? Are
Mhm.
people coming and then leaving immediately? Or so I would say keep an eye on like the right kind of traffic. If you're someone who offers like a free trial or like a subscription of some kind, like are your free trials increasing? Um,
Mhm.
that's a big one.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. What do you think? I mean, I think too, like one of the things I've seen shift, and I love your perspective on this, is before you'd write a blog and you kind of just would be like, okay, we're going to optimize this for Google and we're going to just like, that's how we're going to get the traffic. We're just going to optimize it for Google and just kind of cross our fingers and hope it comes up in the search. And that's how we're going to start getting all these leads to come through, right? I think that that's changed a lot and that you need to be a lot more intentional about how you're distributing your blog content. You can't just rely on the SEO Google gods to bless you with their wonderful algorithm magic, right? So, content, blog content, content that you're creating for your website. How do you recommend people think about distributing that content in addition to publishing it on their blog?
I think having a really solid social media strategy and not just saying like, check out our new blog with a link. I think those days are kind of over too. I think
Yeah.
sharing something really actionable from it, something that maybe they would learn if they read it, but like they don't have to read it to understand that thing. Getting your team involved, getting like your
Mhm.
thought leaders involved, sharing it and like adding, even if it's a few sentences about whatever the topic is and saying like, hey, here's my perspective on this, because that will help
Yeah.
build trust in you as the leader in the brand. It will help spread awareness. So I think that is coming back around. I would say I've seen so many trends of like top content marketing predictions for 2024, and so much of it is about social media again. Where
Mhm.
I feel like that kind of fell off for a couple of years. I feel like that was not as much.
Mhm.
Um, Having a newsletter, that's another thing that you own that you can always come back to, that you can control what people are seeing. So really making sure like you don't just publish a blog and then kind of forget about it. It could be in there. Um, yeah, I would say those are the two biggest ones.
I love that. And I think this kind of ties into I took a personal branding class last month from Mark Schaefer. He's a wonderful marketer. And he recently put out a blog post about Your blog should be the source of your content, and your social media is the distribution strategy. And I think that's so true. We like to call it in our team the content waterfall approach, where you create one nice, solid, long form piece of content, blog post, for example, or maybe it's a live stream event like this or a podcast, right? Like that's your long form piece of content. And you use that as the source of content to basically fuel and feed all of your social channels. So to your point earlier, I love what you said about not just posting the blog link in social, because the platforms want you to stay in platform. So they're going to penalize you for putting links in because they don't want people to leave. And by penalize you, that means they're not going to show your post to as many people. So in order for you to get the reach that you want and optimize the reach, you've got to share some of those nuggets without the link. And then over time, as you share more and more of those nuggets, people are going to recognize, associate your brand, and they'll go back to your website on their own to find that information, is the hope, because you've been talking about it enough and it's interesting and engaging enough. But thinking about like creating the blog as your source of content, and now it's fuel basically to feed and distribute all your social channels. And it just creates a ton of efficiency for brands, because rather than having to like create all these social media posts from nothing, you're creating one piece of nice content and you can just very easily just chunk it out from there, and distribute it that way. And in your newsletter, I love what you said about the newsletter. The email newsletter is solid gold, because you own that list, and it's a great way to build your engagement and your brand through that too. So, my gosh, Amy, time flies when you're having fun. My gosh, this has been so great. Well, what do you have any like final words of wisdom from that you would share for manufacturers and companies who maybe just getting started or wanting to amp up their marketing as they're looking into 2024? What are some things that you're seeing, future trends, things that companies should be thinking about? Like, what is next? What's next for content marketing, and what's advice do you have for companies about what they should be thinking about?
I would say don't give up if you're just starting and you're not seeing results just yet. I would say think about less is more. Less is more. So I feel like so much is like, oh, we have to create all of this content, like you were saying, and like you don't. And I think just like focusing on having really solid things that are answering your customers' questions first and foremost, in a way to get those answers in those customers' hands. So I would say have like a solid strategy for that going into the new year. Let me think what else.
Love that. Less is more. That is such sage advice, because it can be so overwhelming for people just starting with marketing to just be like, where do I start? How do I begin? There's so many things I need to do. But I think just being focused on those things that really matter to your customers, knowing what your customers need and want, and the things that really matter. And I also love what you said about like, it's a long game. And if you really, really want to do marketing right, you have to appreciate that it takes consistent effort over time. You can't just do it for 3 months and then stop. You have to be doing it again and again and again. It's like going to the gym. It's like, if I want to get a six pack, I'm not just going to go 3 times and then stop. Why didn't I get my six pack? Like, come on, you have to like consistently show up again and again and again if you want to get that six pack. And it's the same with marketing. Anything that's of any value takes time and consistency. It can be tedious. It can be monotonous. It can be boring, but you just have to keep showing up. Right, Amy? You got to keep showing up. So keep showing up out there, people.
That's all make friends with ChatGPT.
And make friends with ChatGPT. Yep. And I think Amy has developed a wonderful, amazing framework on how to train your ChatGPT. It's incredible. It's a really wonderful resource that she leverages for our clients. And so I think Amy, for anyone out there who is interested in connecting with Amy, you should be interested at this point, because she's amazing. I can't say enough amazing things about her. So how can people reach you, Amy, and where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. This is my name right on the screen. Yeah, on LinkedIn.
Very good. Yep. And Amy is a fantastic freelance content writer, you would be, she does a tremendous job. So Amy, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been such a pleasure. I love having these conversations with you. Will you come on the show again?
You know what? I think I would, despite how nervous I was.
Well, next time you come on the show, I want you to show people your meme game, because Amy has a fierce meme game. I have never met anyone who lights up the Slack channel with as many amazing memes as she does. So
That's the real benefit of working for me. I can write you really good content, but I will send you even better memes.
yes, she does a fabulous job. So thank you for joining us today. It was just so much wisdom that you shared. And for everyone out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And if you want to connect with Amy, you can find her on LinkedIn, Amy Sariego. Please connect with her. She's a lovely, lovely, lovely lady. So thank you so much, you guys. Have a great day.